So this is really building a virtual workforce, and really what we're doing is ensuring the final success. What is it we need to do to ascertain success and evaluate that success? And that's a very important phase, not just in virtual workforces, it's an important phase in all corporations. Hospitals need to go. I have a whole story on hospitals I won't get into, but hospitals need to, at the end of this, they need to go back and have an after action report like we used to do in the military when things didn't go quite that well. Whether they did or not, you should have this action after action report, and you go in and find out what went wrong and what went right and why and what you need to do, and then add that to your strategy from that point on. That's kind of what this process is we're talking about. It's a strategic review, and so I kind of want to explain what that constitutes, if you will, and why it's important. It's probably some of the last things you'll do in a virtual workforce annually. Probably happens maybe once a year. Could happen twice a year and might need to in certain situations. Uh, if you're a smaller organization, you might be saying, "Wow, this is a whole lot of stuff to do." I know all this stuff. Well, when you formalize something, sometimes you go and you walk through the processes that we've discussed. Sometimes you're going to discover stuff that you thought you knew but didn't know, or stuff that comes to light that you may have not even thought of, things like that. So, like I said in one of my first sessions, if you're a mom and pop operation, you may look at this and go vision, mission, and goals. I'm opening up a coffee shop. I just want to make money and serve people coffee. It's simple. Well, it's not as simple as that. My guess is you thought through this somehow in some way. It may just not be as formal as it was, as we have it here, uh, basically working through larger organizations. Uh, but even larger organizations stumble all over on this, folks. So here's a strategic review, the review of objectives and performance to the organization's vision, mission, and goals. When you look at uh, uh, virtual workforce, one of the things they're doing is they're normally not just the whole workforce. I mean, those are normally too large. They're broken down into subgroupings, either regional or district or teams or whatever that might be. And those virtual workforces were established, as we said in earlier things, sometimes because they're geographically dispersed, because there's a problem that needs to bring unique talent together, or a variety of things like that. So, so what happens is they're going to, in their formulation, also discussed in earlier videos, and their formulation, they're going to look at the organization's vision, mission, and goals, and they're going to establish a similar kind of process, but maybe not as sophisticated as the establishing a vision. They should be focused on how they're going to achieve that vision, how they're going to achieve the mission the organization states, and how they're going to reach the goals the organization wants to reach. And so their formulation process is more probably around uh, a purpose statement for the team, and then looking at some of their own objectives. So a little bit narrower than goals, and maybe even narrowing that simply some tactical or what we call operational action plans that they have to execute in order to ensure that what they're contributing, or what they need to contribute, what they've been asked to contribute, actually does contribute to the objectives, goals, mission, and vision of the organization. So they're cogging the wheel, and they're performing their or spoke in the wheel, if you want to put. They're performing their duty. If that spoke isn't there, then maybe that wheel's a little weaker. So think of it that way. So that's what you want to do as a workforce, virtual workforce. You want to review your objectives and performance to the organizations. You know, how did what we initially planned, was that pretty much what we needed to do, or wasn't it? And another thing you need to do is review the milepost. When you set up operational action plans and activities and things like that, you normally have a set of mileposts along the way that you stop and check and say, hey, are we on track? It's kind of like planning a vacation, you know. You go from point A to point B, you go from Detroit, Michigan to Disney World. You know, it's planned that you're going to just do go straight down the interstate. Drive. Let's say you're going to drive. You're going to drive straight down the interstate, and you know, as long as you're on that map and your GPS shows you on there, that's fine. But if you have to take a detour on that process, you may not reach one of those mileposts that you had set out saying I should be here at 10 o'clock in the evening where I have a hotel available. You may hit a milepost that sends you out of the way or around that place. And so you need to be aware whether or not you're hitting your mileposts or not, because that's going to have a lot to do with whether you get to your end objectives. So you need to do that. You need to evaluate the tools that you use to develop your strategic warforce tactical plans. You know, did you use a SWOT system to set up your action steps? Did you use a balanced scorecard? You know, did you just write them out? How did you go about deciding what you were going to do, and did it work for you, or didn't it work for you? You need to revisit and evaluate the team's purpose statement. When you first set this up, your purpose statement was driving all of your operational action plans, and you felt like this aligned you clearly with the vision, mission, and goals of the corporation. Well, the question is, did it? Was that a good mission statement or a purpose statement for your team? And those are very important things to create, by the way. I think I covered that in an earlier video. You need to revisit and evaluate, or excuse me, you need to evaluate the frequency of business reviews and methodologies. You need to do a strategic gap analysis and potential problem session, ascertaining whether your design of your action plans included a potential problem solving. If it did, was it beneficial? Did anything that you thought might happen or could happen that would distract you actually happen? So you know, did those activities work? Were they things that worked for you? You need to integrate your cultural assessment. I said in the very beginning, you need to assess what type. You need to define the culture that works for your virtual workforce team, that fits your team with the organization and what their culture is. And then you need to assess that and see whether you were there, and or whether there is a gap between what you would like that culture to be versus what the group and yourself said the culture is, and what did you do to correct that, and did that work, and did it help you reach your goals? So that's another part of the review process you need to go through at the end to see, you know, if things worked or they didn't work. Revise existing plans if necessary, and if you're going to be an ongoing group, if it wasn't just a project based thing and it's over, and you're going to be an ongoing virtual workforce group, then you need to revise your existing plans if necessary to fit what didn't work through the process. And most likely there'll be some things that didn't work. After action report at the end of the year, assignment is really all about uh, uh, you know, writing out step by step what happened, and documenting what happened and whether it worked when. Because when you go back and start your next year's assessment of where you're going, you're going to find yourself that information is going to be very, very useful. It's going to cut down a lot of time in getting you the things corrected you need to correct. And that, by definition, is part of what you're trying to do in a review process. And of course, you want to celebrate. So let's look at these one at a time. Review of objective performance to the organization's vision and mission. All right, so uh, you want to review the performance criteria set by the virtual team to ensure meeting their overall goals and objectives. So the performance criteria, the actual things that people were tasked with doing and to what level and to what standard they were asked to do those in order to hit the company's vision, mission, and goals. You need to identify performance criteria met and to what level, whether it was outstanding or not. So, did your performance criteria drive you to the level of high performance or did they not? Identify performance criteria not met and determine the problems to later be solved. That's pretty self explanatory. If there's a gap between expected performance and the actual performance, identify and make the plans to improve performance. You got to decide whether things like initial meeting frequencies and methodologies to achieve your objectives were appropriate. Whether you use the right criteria indicators, enough review meetings along the way, whether you use the right technology, whatever that might be. Determine issues and set dates and times to establish the new tactical plans that you're going to use to change if you're going to continue forward. This would be the follow up team building session for the beginning of the next year that you want to use all the data you've collected and reviewed here to now take that and restructure where you're going. Identify success and reasons for success, as well as things that didn't go right because you'll learn a lot from both of those things, and sometimes reviewing them both in conjunction with each other. So let's talk about mileposts. Were the time frames all right? Did you set up mileposts for once a year, once a quarter, once a month, once a week? Mileposts are things that you check, you say in your planning phase, we should be here at this phase of time in our operating year. Are we there? And if not, why? And you go through that process when you review your mileposts. If the time frame is were not acceptable, you need to know why. Were there too few, too many? Was the meeting duration too long to cover the issues? What was getting in the way? Uh, were corrections made during the year? Did the measurements impact the time frames? So sometimes, you can set measurement criterias that are designed to be measured every 6 months, and that doesn't work for a monthly milepost unless you break those down and work through them. And sometimes you have to do it that way. So you just need to look at these mileposts and say, did we have that nailed down, or was that a problem for us? And what do we need to do to correct that in the future? Once again, if you're an ongoing versus just a project based team where everything's over. Okay. Evaluation of tools used to develop the workforce's strategical tactical plans. Were the processes selected to achieve the plans acceptable to you? If not, why? In other words, we used a balanced scorecard and got a lot of detail into what we were doing, everything. We really didn't need that much detail, and that wasn't the right theory or process used to design our strategy. It kind of made it too cumbersome, slowed us down. It gave us too much to look at. That's one way. Maybe we needed to back up and do different things. What is a SWOT analysis? Did we use a SWOT analysis, which is basically a review of accountability and those kinds of things? Uh, and it's one of those deals where maybe that was should have been done and wasn't done, or something like that. So you want to look at the way you went about designing your strategy, what tools you use, and also are there new and different tools that are open today? Which tools were most effective? Which tools were least effective? Evaluate the impact of the tools. Were they easy to use? Did they deliver a quality product? Were they hard to learn? Were people frustrated with them or not frustrated with them? These are things you need to hear. Most often, you will hear this information in your milepost checks. You'll get a lot of feedback sometimes if you set up those mileposts and make sure that you're doing this frequently enough to catch this kind of stuff early on. And then you'll assess what worked and what didn't. You'll throw out, and maybe you'll get new stuff and put in place that'll help you be more effective next year. Then you got to revisit and evaluate the team's purpose statement. Did this purpose statement work well for the team? Was it clear? Was it concise? Did it keep people on track? Were they clear about their roles, activities that they had to play? Did it provide the right culture and environment that they were looking for? What was good about that purpose statement? These are the questions you should ask. What was good about that purpose statement? What did everybody like about it? What would you have liked to have seen done better in that purpose statement? And what would you like to do differently to improve the team's purpose statement? When you get a dialogue going around those kind of open ended questions, you're going to get a lot of information to help you become better at putting together a purpose statement and making them work for you. Evaluate the frequency of business reviews and methodologies. And this is important because remember, you're a virtual team. It's not like you can set up a Monday morning meeting every morning. That's normally not the case in a virtual workforce. I mean, you can do that, and maybe that's what you need to do, but it's not quite as simple as we discussed in earlier videos. Again, not quite as simple as just calling a meeting, uh, putting a word out through a text message or something. Everybody meet in a conference room. There's usually a little more involved with virtual teams, but were there enough of these in the year to make you feel comfortable so that you don't end up getting a surprise at the end of the year like, oh, we missed our objective by a lot? Was there 100% participation in the business reviews? That's one of the big dynamics that you have to manage as a leader. It's a virtual workforce leader uniqueness. You have to require 100% participation in your sessions and your meetings when you have them, because they're normally not going to be all day planning sessions. You probably don't want to keep a virtual team together more than an hour or two at the most. Outside of that, you're going to lose them. Was the timing of the business reviews important? Did you do them all at 3 o'clock in the morning, or did because somebody was in Europe or Australia versus the United States? Did all that work well? Or were there issues with that? Were the business reviews helpful in making changes throughout the year to ensure they hit the team's objectives? So, this is just something that you want to take a look at and sure you check. uh, Strategic gap analysis and potential problem. Did the team do a gap analysis during the year? Did we take a look at where we were versus where we said we wanted to be, particularly in those mileposts? Was the gap analysis effective in keeping us on track? What tools were used to develop the initial gap analysis? What did you use to do that? And particularly in a virtual workforce environment, there are a lot of tools you can use, that polls and a bunch of other kinds of things you can use to help you work through this. What did you like about the gap analysis? What did you dislike about it? And what would you like to see done differently? Again, those three questions will bring a lot of information together to help you do a better job in this area of evaluating and working through potential problems as you're going along through the year, again, to avoid that surprise at the end of the year. Uh, did you integrate your cultural assessment with your business reviews? And this is important. During the business reviews, did the team assess what role the organizational environment played in achieving or missing the objectives of the team? Did you were you aligned with the culture that the team said they desired to get all these objectives done? And if not, what were some of the barriers that we bumped into in this culture? And was the team satisfied with the culture that existing now, or did the culture change along the way? Maybe a change in leadership, maybe just a change in general. Uh, so you got to ask yourself, was our environment conducive to us hitting the objectives, or were there changes going on? Did leadership apply towards and encourage a culture? Did the team do the same thing? Did you do a cultural assessment, and was it valuable in helping you reach your team goals? So sometimes I often tell people, you don't need to do this necessarily every milepost if you're doing a monthly, for example, or even quarterly, but certainly sometime in the middle of your year, you should back up and do a quick assessment of how the leadership and the team is doing in you know creating and living within the culture they said they really wanted to have to achieve their goals. Very important point of deal. And you would do that at the end of the year, and then take that information to begin to ask yourself, if it didn't, what happened? If it did, you need to pat yourself on the back. You need to revise your existing plan. So once you go all through all of these processes, you look at all this information, you have a methodology to put them together. It's basically you've got to determine the barriers that prevented the team from hitting the objectives, determine what helped the team to hit its objectives. You want both of those things, the successes and failures, so you can really do a good, honest assessment, a transparent, honest assessment, and what I call an intellectual honest assessment. Review any gaps and alter the team as needed. Do you need a new purpose? Do you need new tools? Do you need even new team members? If the team's not finished with a project, then you need to take all this information, get ready to do your next yearly planning process, and to become better than you were this last session. After the action report, an after action report at the end of your assignment, what did you think was great about what you did? What do you feel the team failed at? And what should be changed about the team to make it more effective and improve? And this is absolutely critical if you're going to be successful at improving yourself, allowing self-actualization in your team members to grow, and consequently your team to grow and your leadership to grow. You've got to remember, all through this time there may be changes. So if somebody new comes, if a team member leaves and comes in, you have to be ready to handle that. This all needs to be so well structured that they fit in, they can see everything clearly, they can hit the ground running. And that's true about a leader. A new leader comes in, say your existing team leader got promoted, your virtual workforce team leader got promoted, they did a great job. A new one comes in. That new leader can't come in and just all of a sudden change everything up. They need to take the time as a virtual leader, particularly on a virtual team, they need to make the time to understand how they're going to fit in with the team, not the other way around. The team doesn't fit in with the leader in a virtual workforce. The leader needs to figure out how they're going to fit in the team and how they can best help that team get where they were. And they will also need a clear understanding of the culture and the goals, the objectives, the purpose, and all that stuff. That's why that's all set up, because there will be changes. There will be changes as you go out through the year. So that's the reason why you do an end of the year review process and why it's so important. And the last thing, of course, you've heard this all through these 5 sessions. You need to then take time to celebrate your successes. Yes, you're going to have to make changes, and yes, you may make, but there's a lot you probably did well. You need to celebrate your team. You need to celebrate your successes, and there's always something. Trust me, there's always something you can celebrate about. So that's the importance of doing a final review on a virtual workforce team. And this is the last in the series of I'm going to do in this area. And so it's important that you uh, take the time to understand the value that's associated with these kinds of things. Uh, you can't operate a virtual workforce like you do one that is in an office building that you're going to have access to on a continual basis. It just doesn't work that way. Uh, you can try it and you might have some success with it, but it's not going to be a great success. It's not going to be a high performance team. And I'm guessing that you now will probably find some corporations actually putting into their strategic plans how to cope with establishing a quick virtual workforce. So you can begin to see the whole strategy about setting up a virtual workforce like we've discussed this week beginning to evolve in the leadership's mind of large corporations and even small companies that have enough employees that can work from home. It's important to understand these dynamics and they need to be part of your strategy and they need to be part of your potential problem assessment. That is something I cannot actually emphasize enough in a strategy session. It's like when you've got it all on paper and it looks really great, uh, I normally take time when everybody's done. I said, "Are you guys all happy? Are you satisfied with what you have?" They go, "Yes, we really are. We like this. This looks good." It's at that point I bring the hammer question home. What in the world can screw this up? Now, I may say it a little more graphically than that, but that's the question. Now that you have this, I want you to take a few minutes and brainstorm all the things that can go wrong that will screw this up and what you need to know about those things to make a plan to deal with them if they happen. Worldwide pandemic in the hospital industry. I don't blame doctors and I don't blame nurses for their problem with dealing with this coronavirus. I blame hospital executives. It's their responsibility to forecast and look into and predict things that can screw up their hospital operations. Instead of figuring out how much they will need to have an inventory and stockpile and have an inventory just in case there's a pandemic, instead of doing that, what most of them have been doing is minimizing all that in order to maximize profitability. That's a capitalistic approach to a people problem that is now costing us lives because we weren't ready. So I blame them. I'm not even blaming Congress. They don't even have any idea what should have happened. You know, I do blame someone who takes out the whole pandemic planning team and just gets rid of them because they're not cost effective. Okay. I do blame that person, you know who I'm talking about, for that. Okay. But I'll tell you this these hospitals should have known better. The executives in these hospitals should have known. They're doctors, damn it. They let their money and greed get in front of what they know they needed to do to save lives if something like this happened. Okay. And then you don't have to rely on the government to stockpile and because they're liable to have the same attitude that you have, and that is we're not going to keep stuff in inventory if it's going to raise the cost and expense of government. Wow, we don't want that. Well, it would have been nice to have right now. So those are the kinds of things that companies need to do. Virtual teams need to do the same kind of things on a much simpler level. a more activity-based level than a strategy level. But nonetheless, then those thought processes, those dynamics, make any organization, large or small, more effective. So I hope you enjoyed this series. Feel free to pass it on to any of your friends you want. You can go in there and log in to the playlist, and I think there's a way you can actually copy the link to that playlist. And, go Google it or go find out in Facebook how to do that. I know you can because I've done it, but I just can't remember how to do it. If you're interested in taking that playlist and putting it somewhere and then showing it to people over a period of time and help you train them to get ready, feel free to do it. These are not things I put together to market. I will put into the comments section of this last video the types of tools that I've used to do this kind of work for over 30 years successfully, to build high performance teams and to build high performance virtual teams. And so I will try to give you the link to some of the resources that I've used. They may work for you, they may not. You may need to update them a great deal because you got to remember, I jumped out of this world back in 2004 or 5. That's a long time ago. There's a lot that's happened since then that's been upgraded. So this is just designed to give you an idea of the kinds of things you need to be thinking about. And you can take this and enhance it to work for you and make it unbelievably successful for you. Okay. If you have questions, you can put them in the comment sections of any of the videos. I'll try to respond to them.
You can like my Facebook page, What the Flip, and follow me, and stay tuned for more broadcasts of this podcast, What the Flip. Until then, have a great day.
So, anyway, have a great day.